Welcome to the show. After the show. That's right after the show. Cheers. We got a case of the giggles today.
A little bit.
Okay. So this may be a new record for fastest script we've ever written.
Maybe. It made so much sense to us. It's really because of the how Fred and George uncovered the Marauders.
It's really where we started.
That's where we started. Yeah, because we were like, oh, isn't it cool that it was like comparing the map to the hat, where it was like, oh yeah, the Founders poured all of their intelligence into the hat, and I was like, yeah, the Marauders kind of did the same thing to the map, and it was like, and there's 4 of them, and 3 of them match up. All of them match up really well.
Yes, but that's the weird thing. It's like you start going through it, and in my head I was like, okay, like James, obviously Gryffindor, Lupin, Ravenclaw, and then you're sort of like, wait a second, but you might. Like, because it's that thought of like Peter Hufflepuff, like you sort of like want to go there very quickly because he's not like a very like bold personality. But when it really comes down to it, when you like assess everything to do with it, it's like, whoa, Sirius would be a Hufflepuff, which is just so, it's surprising to me. Like for such like an edgy sort of like almost like you want to go punk type of character.
It's not hard at all for me to believe though. Honestly, like, I'm sure everyone on Patreon here knows Jordan from the Discord, our office manager, who is very similar to like, she's definitely the most Hufflepuff person I know, but is like, has that like challenger attitude about her at times. Like you don't want to cross.
You don't want to cross Jordan. It's a good point. It actually is a very good point. Jordan and Sirius have an unexpected amount in common.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
But I really loved it. I think the thing that I like really started feeling like almost even like a little bit of emotion towards was when we were looking at that particular instance of like James and Sirius and Snape all talking on the train on their way to Hogwarts for the first time.
Yeah.
Because it's like, there's a lot going on there. Like you start to like really understand these characters like as children in sort of this like they're acting in a way that is just so maybe so much more pure to just their essence of character. And
because they're not sorted yet.
So like at this point in time, like, you know, James and Sirius haven't had years of best friendship backing everything up. And yet there's like something about James that is like, that like Sirius just clings to.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like just right out of that gate, he's kind of like, okay, like this guy, I get it. Because I do think that Sirius he's getting on that train, and in my mind, 100% convinced he's going to be in Slytherin House.
He's like kind of dreading it, I think.
I don't
really feel like I fit in with my family. They're all this very specific way. They've all been in the same house. This is just going to be more of the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of interestingly, it's sort of the same vibe that you have from Ron, who is, I mean, he ultimately is in Gryffindor still, but like Ron is struggling with the same thing. You know, he comes from a long line of Gryffindors, and I think he's sort of like, maybe not resenting the thought of being in Gryffindor, but he's worried that he won't.
It's like the same thing, but in reverse, where it's like Sirius is coming from a long line of Slytherins and is like, oh gosh, I'm going to end up in Slytherin. And Ron is like, I'm from a whole line of Gryffindors and I might not be in Gryffindor.
Right. Yeah. It's true. And then ironically, those are both the candidates that we would pick to be like the Hufflepuff representation, which is interesting as well. And so, yeah, just from there, though, I mean, it's like the other idea, too, is that sort of coming from this black family that was like so bought into the idea of like the pure bloodedness of everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's sort of how you're supposed to go after. Because he even says his parents aren't like, they weren't Death Eaters, but they were walking.
They thought they had the right idea.
Yeah. They were walking to the beat of that drum. So I think like if you're a young kid and you're growing up and you're like, man, like I don't agree with that, then you may have a lot of like the same instincts, but how you apply them could be very different.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what we get with a really cool Sirius. And Sirius is one of my favorite characters. So it was fun to talk about him today.
It was fun talking about him. Also, just to be clear, in case we didn't make it clear in the video, we're not saying Sirius should have been a Hufflepuff or that Lupin should have been a Ravenclaw.
No.
Like, they are all absolutely Gryffindors.
Yes, at their core. And I think I think we made that clear in the video.
I think so.
But it is the idea that probably at its core, on some level, it's a medley of all these attributes that lead to great friend groups.
Yeah.
And there's probably a like an argument for there just not being houses.
Yeah. It's just sort of like, I just think that's why I think it was good to open with the comparison to like the Golden Trio, because like lots of people make that comparison, I think, without any like further prodding. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. They all have to choose to be in Gryffindor.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like they each represent the other houses, but they're in Gryffindor. And it's like, yeah, same thing. Same thing.
Right.
They all represent the other houses, but they're in Gryffindor.
What's interesting about three of them, though, is that, I mean, Neville wanted to be in Hufflepuff, and the Hat disagreed and put him in Gryffindor. It was Hermione's a hat stall between Ravenclaw and Gryffindor, and then Harry just specifically didn't want to be in Slytherin.
Right. And then Neville's also a hat stall.
Right, yeah. But then, and then there's Ron.
Yeah, then there's Ron.
Who,
I know just what to do with you.
There you go. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. We had a lot of fun writing it, and I think it's a good one. It's cool. I hadn't heard people come up with this before.
Yeah, I haven't heard people be like, "Yeah, Sirius, such a Hufflepuff."
I know, right? Yeah. Otherwise, guys, until next week, bye.